everybody, my name is Tawqir Zafar and today I am going to discuss with you the questions of the mains exam of 2020. Let us take a look of the divisor of the questions asked in 2020. So just take a look of the chart. Total number of marks in 2013 to 2020, 75 marks. This is the chart. This time they did not ask any question from world history. There were 4 questions from Indian heritage and culture, that is Indian art and culture, 50 marks, and 2 questions from modern India. So world history this time it was left, and modern India, that is after independence, that is post independence, they did not ask any question from this topic. So it is up to the discretion of the UPSC. So there were 6 questions and we will discuss the answers of the 6 questions, the answer format of the 6 questions. So let us see what were the questions that were asked in the main exam. See this question. The rock cut architecture represents one of the most important sources of our knowledge of early Indian art and history. This is 150 words and 10 marks. See, in this question, rock cut architecture. This is the first part, which represent one of the most important source of our knowledge of early Indian art, yes, and history. So how will you write this answer? This question is from Indian architecture. Indian architecture, and especially from ancient India, that is from rock cut architecture. We cover this topic in Indian architecture, cave and monolithic temples. So let us see how we will proceed. See, in the first part, you introduce rock cut architecture. What is rock cut architecture? You need to write here. कि rock cut architecture होता क्या है? How this architecture evolved? What was the genesis of this architecture? Rock cut architecture. You have to write the time period. So you have to write what it is. कि रॉक को, पहाड़ को कैसे काट करके केव बनाया जाता था. How the cave was formed, or how the cave temple was formed, how the monolithic temple was formed. It was cut out of solid rock. That is structure made by cutting out from solid rock. And this can be in the form of cave. गुफा जो होती है, गुफा 2 तरह की होगी. The cave which is natural caves, and the other is man-made cave. So rock cut architecture is indicating towards man-made. So in the first part you just introduced in 2 to 3 lines, because you have to see the word limit also. 2 to 3 lines ki what is rock cut architecture, and it is the one of the most spectacular specimen of Indian art, Indian architecture, and it began in ancient times, and in the, you can say, in the 600 BC, and especially in Mauryan times. So in the first part you just introduced it in 30 words or something, part 2 you write early caves. Early caves. Early caves you have to write because cave is also an expression of rock cut architecture. Cave is the most important expression. Gufa. It has two important parts, that is Chaitya and Vihara. And other important expression of the cave is in the form of temple. These temples are developed in the later period, in Gupta period, we see in the period of Rashtrakuta, in the period of Pallavas, Chalukyas. So in the early caves, first you write this is the most, this here the important part comes. Early caves you have to write Bhimbetka cave. Bhimbetka caves near Bhopal in Madhya Pradesh. It is prehistoric art. Prehistoric art. And this cave, in this cave there are paintings also. In the prehistoric art we find these caves famous for paintings, which is an expression of the socio-cultural life of that time. So painting in the prehistoric period, in the Mesolithic period, in the later Paleolithic period, and mainly in the Mesolithic period, which is an expression of their socio-cultural life. And in that time caves were used for praying or for settlement, for shelter. The early men used to have. The cave was mainly for settlement or for shelter in the beginning. So you have to write about Bhimbetka cave, the importance of Bhimbetka cave in 2 to 3 lines only. Then in this early caves only you have to write about the Barabar and Nagarjuni Hill cave. Barabar and Nagarjuni Hill caves. In Barabar and Nagarjuni Hill caves, what you need to write? The Barabar and Nagarjuni Hill caves were donated by the Mauryan rulers Ashoka and his grandson Dasratha to Ajivika sect, and that shows the tolerance in that time, the mutual understanding, the religious tolerance. So these two caves are very important, which is indicating towards the history of Buddhism and history of the heterodox sects that developed in the 600 BC. At the same time, the architecture also. There are inscriptions which is related to it, because see, in Ashokan inscription we study the Barabar and Nagarjuni Hill cave edicts also, and there Dasharatha is writing, speaking about the religious tolerance, because they were following, Ashoka was following Buddhism. So even then he donated the caves to Ajivika sect, which was one of the 64 heterodox sects of that time. So you can say that Bhimbetka caves, Barabar and Nagarjuni Hill caves, these two are very good expression of the cave architecture, and that is the early caves. ये लिख लिया आपने, पहले आपने बता दिया केव क्या है. केव का इस्तेमाल क्या है? एक तो रहने के लिए और दूसरा पूजा पाठ करने के लिए, इबादत करने के लिए. मेनली शुरू में इट वॉज फॉर लिविंग पर्पस ओनली, बट लेटर ऑन ग्रेजुअली विद द पैसेज ऑफ टाइम it was used for the praying purpose also, because the cave has two part in the Buddhist period. इसको समझिए. पार्ट 2 आपने लिखा कि अर्ली केव्स, ये बता दिया मैंने आपको भिमबेटका. देन यू सी केव्स का इस्तेमाल क्या है? फॉर शेल्टर, फॉर प्रेइंग, प्लेस ऑफ प्रेइंग, place of prayer, you can say. So it was divided in the Buddhist time, because Buddhism developed in 600 BC, and the caves were divided into chaityas and viharas. Chaitya is worshipping place, place of worship. Vihara is residential place for monks. Residential place for monks. It is a place of worship. Chaitya, worship. So in the initial cave, early caves, you write about Bhimbetka, you write about Barabar and Nagarjuni Hill, the importance of cave in that time, little bit, not go into details because you have only 150 words. Part 3. After early caves, you write cave temples. And this you cover it from, mainly from post-Maurya period, Mauryan period, then Gupta period, post-Gupta period, then Pallavas, Chalukyas, Rashtrakutas के बारे में. In the post Maurya period, you see, you have to describe here cave temples, मंदिर बनाए गए, monasteries बनाई गई, chaityas, viharas बनाए गए. This is for Buddhism. The main religion attached to it. See, because rock cut architecture indicates religions, in fact different religions, Buddhism, Jainism, Hinduism. In post-Maurya period, there are two types of caves that we find in eastern part of India and in the western part of India. Western part mainly in Maharashtra, Karle, Kanheri, Kondan, then the caves in the eastern part also. So let us discuss this. In the western part, बताइए आप western part में क्या होगा? महाराष्ट्र में जो caves हैं, महाराष्ट्र के caves बताइए. The significance of those caves, किस religion से attached हैं? You have to write the religion also. Why those caves were made? So in the western parts, number of caves were made. Ajanta also, in fact, Ajanta developed with the passage of time, in post-Maurya, in Gupta and the post-Gupta period. And the Kanheri cave is there, Karle cave is there, Kondan cave is there. Different caves were developed in the western part, and that was attached to Buddhism. That you need to write here. And in the eastern part of India, eastern part there is Udaygiri and Khandagiri. In western part it was mainly attached to Buddhism. There it was attached to Jainism also. Hathi Gumfa, Rani Gumfa, these are the caves, and they were used for worship. Here also in the western parts there were two parts of the cave, Chaityas and Viharas. So in this cave temples you discuss about post-Mauryan period. Then in Gupta period mainly there are three types of caves. Ajanta is there, Ajanta caves. Then there are Bagh caves. Then there is a cave in Mandargiri Hill in Bhagalpur. Ajanta cave is very important. It is related to Buddhism. We find the beautiful paintings also. This cave developed in the post-Maurya period, and it was well developed in Gupta period. We find the paintings which was an expression of the Buddhism, the stories of the previous birth of Buddha, that is Jatak, and it was also listed in UNESCO's World Heritage Site list. So most of them are listed only. So we find Ajanta caves, and then Bagh cave, which is in Madhya Pradesh. Bagh cave, Ajanta is in Maharashtra in Aurangabad district. Bagh is also related to, Rang Mahal. Very beautiful murals, carvings are there. So you have to write about Bagh, you have to write about Ajanta in detail. Then in Ajanta, it was further developed in post-Gupta period also. Then Ajanta cave you write, then you write about Bagh caves, then you write about Mandar Hill, that was also developed during the time of Gupta. Then in the post-Gupta period there were development like the Ellora caves. Ellora caves also you have to write. Here let me write it. Ajanta mainly you have to focus. Ajanta, Bagh, Ellora, Elephanta. Ellora, Elephanta, these are developed in the Gupta period and these are attached mainly to Rashtrakutas. तो इन सबको आपको डिस्कस करना पड़ेगा इसमें. So you have to write that to which religion these belongs to. किससे related है? What are the special features? Then Ellora also you see, Ellora was attached to Buddhism, Jainism, Hinduism. That shows against the religious tolerance. Religious tolerance. You have to discuss, about Kailash temple. Kailash temple, Shiva temple. Kailash is another name of, Kailashnath is another name of Lord Shiva. Kailash temple built by Rashtrakutas. Then again Elephanta, it is attached to Rashtrakutas. The statue of Trimurti, ये सब बताइए इसमें. त्रिमूर्ति लेफ्ट साइड में क्या है, सेंटर में क्या है, अर्धनिरेश्वर इन लेफ्ट साइड, Maheshwar in the middle side, and then Sri Gangadhar in the right side. Maheshwara, Trimurti of Maheshwara. Maheshwara is another name of Lord Shiva. So you find mainly Hinduism, mainly. In Hinduism you find the Shaivism. So you have to discuss about Elephanta, Ellora. These are monolithic cave temples. Monolithic temples. So किस religion से related है? To what religion it is related? To which time it is related? To which dynasties it is related? And what is the main thing? क्या इससे निकल के आता है? जैसे त्रिमूर्ति is a very famous. Then Kailash temple is there. Shore temple is there. So different things that you have to mention. तो ये points आपके होने चाहिए उसमें. Ajanta, Bagh, and then cave temples. ये सारे cave temples western part के. Then in the eastern part, the temples in the eastern part in the post Maurya period, and then in Gupta, post Gupta. Then discussing about the Ajanta, Ellora, and Elephanta. You don't have to write in detail about it, just giving a few 2 to 3 lines about each, because there is only 150 word you have to write. So you take a look of the question. Rock cut architecture represent the most important source of our knowledge of early Indian art and history. History also you are telling to which dynasty this, who gave patronage to such architecture, to which religion it belonged to, what kind of architecture was there. So you have to write in short about all these points. You will include these points. होता क्या है, Bhimbetka क्या है, बराबर Nagarjuni hill, and these caves of eastern side, western side, to which religion western side caves belong to, who developed it, getting the point. And finally focusing mainly on Ajanta, Bagh, Ellora, Elephanta, and then you have to write the significance of the cave architecture. What was the significance of cave architecture? So you have to highlight on these points, and then I hope this would be a good answer. So if we divide it into first part introducing rock cut architecture, part 2 early caves. Here only we write about post Maurya period also. And in the third part, monolithic temples, that is focusing on the Ajanta caves and mainly on Ellora and Elephanta caves, because we find the temple architecture, because temple for the first time developed in Gupta period, and rock cut temple architecture developed during the time of the period of Rashtrakutas and Pallavas and then Chalukyas, Vesar type of architecture that was the fusion of the Nagar and the Dravid architecture, style of architecture. So you have to write these points in this particular question. So I hope it must be clear to you. Then take a look of the next question. Pala period is the most important phase in the history of Buddhism. Enumerate. See, again this question, earlier this question that I discussed with you, it is related to culture, and in culture it is related to architecture. Very important. See, in architecture they ask you two types of architecture: Buddhist architecture and temple architecture. And mainly rock cut architecture comprises both Buddhist and temple. Rock cut architecture has two important parts are Buddhist architecture and temple architecture. So we discuss both here. In the second thing that we need to understand is the Palas. The Pala, that is early medieval times. In the early medieval times, how the Pala were giving patronage to Buddhism when Buddhism was declining, was at its lowest ebb. It was diminishing from India, but later on the patronage given by the Palas, it created a very good base for Buddhism again. But even then, after hundreds of years, the monasteries and other important structures of Buddhism was destroyed with the coming of the invaders from outside. So we have to discuss about that also. So take a look of this question. Pala period is the most significant phase in the history of Buddhism in India. Enumerate. See, in the first part, part 1, state of Buddhism in early medieval times. You have to write this. That Buddhism, developed in 600 BC, and with the passage of time got different patronage from different dynasty, different kings, different, main ruler was Ashoka, and later on when there was establishment of the foreign ruling groups, they also gave patronage to Buddhism. But during this phase, Buddhism started declining. Buddhism started declining in the early medieval times. It was diminishing from India. And here in this period, in this part only you write that Palas were giving patronage to Buddhism when it was in its declining stage from rest of the other parts of India. And Palas were ruling Bengal mainly. The founder of the Pala dynasty was Gopala. In this part, just give a brief introduction that Buddhism was established in 600 BC, but with the passage of time it got patronage from different kings and dynasties, and in early medieval times it started declining. In fact, in the post-Mauryan period only, when it acquired the shape of Mahayana Buddhism, started declining. During this time it declined from rest of the other parts of the country, but the Palas who rose up and Pala dynasty was formed by Gopala in 750 AD. They started giving patronage to Buddhism, this religion. Then again, now you come to the, after writing this little bit, then you give the patronage given by Palas to Buddhism. The main person is Dharmpal, and we get the information from Tibetan chronicles that Palas were giving the patronage to Buddhism, and in Buddhism they were giving patronage to Mahayana Buddhism. Mahayana Buddhism, in which Buddha is considered as God and his image is being worshipped. And this Mahayana Buddhism developed in post-Maurya period. So you have to write here how they started giving patronage, how Dharampal revived the Nalanda University. Nalanda University revived, and Nalanda University became the Mecca of the scholars from Southeast Asia and Tibet. Then 200 villages were granted, were given to develop viharas, the residential place for monks. Then another university that was developed was Vikramshila University. Vikramshila University. Even this was a place of Buddhist learning. Nalanda University was a place of Buddhist learning. And later on, Devpala also gave patronage to it. Then the Baladevaputra, who was belonging to Shailendra dynasty, he also asked the Pala rulers to give 5 villages, and that were used to build the viharas, and which were given patronage to, which gave patronage to the Buddhist learning, Buddhism. So during this time, how they were giving patronage to Mahayana Buddhism, to this religion, and they were so much dedicated to Buddhism. Then you have to write in this only that what was the relation of India with Tibet and what was the relation of India with Southeast Asia. The cultural relations were developed, and with that trade was also developing with Southeast Asia, and that is why religion also spreaded to that, the other parts of the world, especially Southeast Asia. So mention about Nalanda University, mention about Vikramshila University, mention about Mahayana Buddhism. Then the new form of Buddhism also developed during this period, that was called as Tantric Buddhism. Tantric Buddhism, and this Tantric Buddhism is called as Vajrayana Buddhism. क्या कहलाता है ये? Vajrayana Buddhism. So they developed this kind of Buddhism in the later stage. Hinayana Buddhism, Mahayana Buddhism, Vajrayana Buddhism. So this was the patronage given when Buddhism was declining from India. So you have to write about the patronage given by them. They embraced Buddhism, and later on in 1 or 2 lines you write that Bakhtiyar Khalji was one of the commanders when Delhi Sultanate was established, and he destroyed Nalanda University, and he was one of the person who destroyed Buddhism, which was already declining. But during that time they got the that is why they asked this question, because during the time of decline, who gave patronage to Buddhism? To revive Nalanda University, gave the patronage to Vikramshila University, which is in Bhagalpur. So we need to understand. Let us read the question once again. Pala period is the most significant phase. बोल रहा है significant phase for what in the history of Buddhism? Why? It was the last try, you can say, to revive Buddhism, which was declining from India, and the patronage given by the Pala rulers. So this, if you write this way, in the part 1 you write about Buddhism and little bit about the foundation of the Pala ruler, and in the second part you write about patronage and their connection with Tibet and Southeast Asia, and Shailendra dynasty, and what type of Buddhism that they developed during this time, what kind of Buddhism developed, those grant of 200 villages for developing the the monasteries, the viharas, 5 Mahaviharas were developed. Udantipura was one of them, famous one. So you have to write this in the second part. In the first part you have to write. So this way you can write 150 words. So now take a look of the next question, that evaluate the policies of Lord Curzon and their long-term implications on the national movement. This we have to discuss, and this is a question from modern India, and it is not a difficult question, it is a very easy question that we have to discuss. So let us take a look of this question. Evaluate the policies of Lord Curzon and their long-term implication on national movement. So what you have to do here, in the part 1 you write about Lord Curzon, introducing Lord Curzon, बिल्कुल शॉर्ट में, that Lord Curzon, George Nathaniel Curzon was his full name, and his time period 1899 to 1905. He was one of the most important Governor General, and he came during the time of 1899, and his most important step or the policy was partition of Bengal. Partition of Bengal. Beside partition of Bengal, he carried out other policies also. We need to understand that in this you need to write that he was a strict imperialist. He was an imperialist in strict sense, and just write 2 to 3 lines about Lord Curzon and how the policy of Lord Curzon paved the way for Indian national movement or made the national movement very intense. His policy. So in introducing first part you write part 2, policies and their implications Here you start writing. सबसे important है partition of Bengal. You write about partition of Bengal. That partition of Bengal was done with the intention to curb the nationalistic consciousness or nationalistic sentiment that was developing in Bengal. Bengal was the nerve center of Indian nationalism. It was the hub of Indian nationalism and Hindu-Muslim unity. Objective क्या था? Indian nationalism को curb करना, to curb Indian nationalism or nationalistic sentiments which was growing, and Hindu-Muslim unity. it was the hub of Hindu-Muslim unity. It was the hub of Indian nationalism, the growth of Indian nationalism. And it was in the news, it was in the air that, again a movement is going to come. Like, revolt is going to happen. And Curzon knew this, that this is happening. That there are too much of grievances are there against the British rule, and they are going to express it through a great revolt. And objective was to break this kind of Indian nationalistic consciousness, because Bengal was politically charged, and to break Hindu-Muslim unity. And to break, the Hindus and Muslim on the basis of language also, Bengali and non-Bengali. See, क्योंकि objective क्या है? If the Indian nationalism will grow, it will be a threat to the British imperialism. So break it and divide them on communal lines. So it was a part of their divide and rule policy. Hindu-Muslim divide and rule policy. Following the divide and rule policy, they wanted to divide Hindus and Muslims, because they knew that the Hindus and Muslims, they get united, will create a problem for them. And the growth of nationalism was also happening. So, but officially it was stated that, we are doing it because Bengal is a very big area and it is very difficult for them to administer. That is why for administrative convenience we are going to divide Bengal, because it is difficult to administer. But actually the main reason was Indian nationalism. So the objective was for curbing the Indian nationalism, the nationalistic sentiments, but it backfired. It backfired in the form of Swadeshi movement. जितना दबाने की कोशिश की Indian nationalistic sentiments को, it came with, double force, and the expression was Swadeshi movement. Because it was a shock for, dividing Bengal, East Bengal, West Bengal. It was a shock for them. And there were expression in different forms. There were expressions because of this division. So it increased the nationalistic consciousness, which had long-term implication, that is, which led to the freedom struggle and which led to freedom of India. It had a great impact on the Indian national movement. That the result is coming after a long time. The expression of their divide and rule policy, or the expression of their curbing the nationalistic sentiments. So partition of Bengal you discuss, okay? Second, you discuss the Indian University Act. Indian University Act 1900, बड़ा बदमाश था कर्जन, देख रहे हैं ना हरकतें उसकी. इंडियन यूनिवर्सिटी एक्ट ये इसलिए किया गया because he wanted the center to control all the universities, because according to him universities were the hub of Indian nationalism. It was becoming the hub of Indian nationalism. Curzon was also not happy with the formation of the Indian National Congress. So he ridiculed Indian National Congress several times, criticized the working of Indian National Congress. That is why with the policies of the British, there was creation of the Muslim League. And with the creation of this Muslim League, what happened? It was acting as a stumbling block for Indian nationalism. And later on, the implication was seen on the national movement as well. After independence, 1947, the partition was done and the formation of Pakistan. And till today, we have a great implication, on the economy of India, on the security of India and everything. You can see the long-term implication even today, not only on national movement, because of the policies of the British, the divide and rule policy, in which Curzon was playing a very important role. So Indian University, he wanted to control the Indian University so that they can, because he wanted to curb this kind of nationalistic feelings. So he was an imperialist in true sense, Curzon. The third thing that he did after the Indian University Act, Indian Monument Ancient Monument Protection Act 1904. Even this was very important. Why? See, that led to the revival of the culture, revival of the Indian culture, and it also led to the formation of Archaeological Survey of India. Revival of the old culture, the true culture of India. This gave them, the Indians, the confidence, and that led to the love towards one country, and this gave rise to nationalistic feelings. Because we were treated that we have no potential to run our administration, we were looked down upon, we were insulted. And in the policy of officialization, Curzon says that the Indians do not deserve to rule. They are only they can only be ruled. So such kind of things that was being developed by Curzon, like policy of officialization. Fourth, in fact, policy of officialization. Policy of officialization, very important, that Indian do not have the talent or potential to rule. हम लोगों में इतनी सलाहियत नहीं है, इतना पोटेंशियल नहीं है कि हम लोग एडमिनिस्टर कर सके, इसलिए गोरे हम पे एडमिनिस्टर करते आगे. And then Ancient Monument Protection Act that led to Archaeological Survey of India, and when the excavations were done, we got to know our culture through archaeological excavation, through edicts, through monuments, through different art and architecture. जब पता चला, then our confidence got. So it was, again, this also backfired, though it was done in the right sense. Curzon did some positive works also in the field of railways, in the field of famine commissions were made. Then in the field of agriculture, like Indian Agriculture Institute, PUSA, that was developed by him. Police commissions, he made Fraser Commission, was very important development, changes in police system. So several things that he did which was very good. Then there was Official Secret Act. ये सब लिखना होगा तब मार्क्स मिलेगा. Secret Act. It was I think in 1800. Official Secret Act. This was a very important development. That was in expanding the Sedition Act. Whoever speaks against the government, he will be tried, he will be put behind the bar. So these kind of developments were done. These were the policies that were started by Curzon, and this had implication in the longer terms. Like very important thing that I told you, Indian Monument Protection Act, Indian University Act, Partition of Bengal, you have to write in detail. Partition of Bengal खूब डिटेल से लिखना होगा. Policy of officialization, Official Secret Act, ये सब चीज़ें आप जब mention कर देंगे, then your answer. Then positive aspects also, little bit about agriculture, little bit about famine, little bit about police commission that was made. In education, Raleigh Commission, for example, the things that he developed, तो जाके. But main is Partition of Bengal, why it was done and what was the reason given officially and partition of Bengal led to Swadeshi movement. Immediate result was Swadeshi movement, and Swadeshi movement paved the way for nationalism. So even that, the policies of Curzon had their long term implication. That was very important development. So this is done. One more thing is missing, that was that I will write here. Calcutta Corporation. Calcutta Corporation Act. So Calcutta Corporation Act deducted the or diminished the power of local self government. Official Secrecy Act, I told you. Expansion of the Sedition Act, this was in 1904. You can make. So these policies that you need to write down, isko likh dijiye. Obviously they had implication on the Indian national movement. Getting the point? Now the next question is, Persian literary sources of medieval India reflect the spirit of the age. It is not a difficult question. The question indicated towards Persian literature, that is in Sultanate period and in Mughal period. Sultanate period and Mughal period, these two. And this had a reflection of what? Basically the social, that is socio-cultural, socio-economic aspects, and mainly the politico-administrative aspects. Some are in the form of autobiography, some are Sufi literature, both in Sultanate and Mughal period. Started from Ghaznavid and Ghoraid period, and then in the time of Qutubuddin Aibak, during the time of Qutubuddin Aibak, Tajul Masir, written by Hassan Nizami, and later on Tabqat-e Nasiri, Minhajus Siraj gives the description about the rulers, about the condition of India, at the same time the socio-economic condition, political condition. Especially in the time of Minhajus Siraj, he writes about, in Tabqat-e Nasiri, he writes about the situation of Delhi Sultanate, especially about Razia, that how Iltutmish chose his daughter over his inefficient sons. So it describes about that condition also. So the politico-administrative situation, what is the system of society, what was society, what was culture that time, what was the economic condition. Economic condition you can see in Ain-e-Akbari, you see in Akbarnama, and various land revenue policy described. The land revenue policy described by Ziauddin Barni, Maulana Ziauddin Barni in Tarikh-e-Firoz Shahi. The various policies of that time described in the autobiography of Firoz Shah Tughlaq, that is Futuhat-e-Firoz Shahi. Then the history writing that was done from Delhi Sultanate and continued in the Mughal period also. So one by one we have to go. So in this you have to discuss about Sultanate and Mughal period and how it was writing those Persian literature. The history writing was done in Urdu and Arabic also, but mainly in Persian literature, especially in the Mughal period, was done in the Persian period. in the Persian language, which describes about various aspects of human life, and that was reflection of the spirit of the age. This is the question. Comment. You have to write the literature and to what things that literature is related to. Literature क्या है? सल्तनत को पकड़िए पहले and then come to मुगल. इस टाइप से चले. Getting the point? ऐसे होगा ये. Part 1 you write just intro to Persian literary sources. Then in the part 2 you write about Delhi Sultanate. What all literature developed? Persian literature. You don't have to write other things. Write from the dynasty, Ilbari dynasty to Lodi dynasty. All the important things, especially, starting from Tajul Masir, then, Minhajus Siraj. It doesn't require a very in-depth knowledge to write this answer, because you cannot write the description of everything. Minhajus Siraj writes Tabqat-e-Nasiri. Then you have to write about Amir Khusru. What he wrote, Deval Rani and Khizr Khan and Deval Rani, the romantic story between Khizr Khan, the Khalji ruler, and Deval Rani, the the queen of Gujarat, daughter of Rai Karan. And then Khazainul Futeh of Amir Khusru, where he describes about the war and conquest and the conquest of Alauddin Khalji. Miftaul Futeh, the conquest of how he what were the important features of the conquest of Jalaluddin Khalji. Nuh Sufir. These are the works that was written, and that describes about. Then he describes about music also. Amir Khusru. So you have to write about Amir Khusru. He is writing, don't go into details about all the writings. Only few. Getting the point? उनके important work को highlight कीजिए किस चीज़ के बारे में है, and that will indicate towards political aspect or social aspect or economic aspect or cultural aspect. Then Minhajus Siraj is very important. The quick succession that happened in the Delhi Sultanate and how Razia was important. And he writes about this the complete the sentence. It is written in the Tabqat-e-Nasiri, where Iltutmish says about, praises his daughter and chose his daughter over his son. So ये सारी चीज़ें ये हो गया आपका जाके. Then very important historian is Ziauddin Barni. Ziauddin Barni. He write Tarikh-e Firoz Shahi, got patronage of Firoz Shah Tughlaq. He writes about Tughlaq dynasty and the history of before Tughlaq also. He wrote Tarikh-e Firoz Shahi. Firoz Shahi. Tarikh is history. Then he writes Fatwa-e Jahandari. Also he writes. Then Firoz Shah Tughlaq himself was a writer. He writes his autobiography Futuhat-e Firoz Shahi. This is the most, Ziauddin Barni was the most celebrated historian, and he gives, Barni quotes about Alauddin Khalji's policy, war and conquest, his secular aspects of Alauddin Khalji, that when Qazi Mughizzuddin comes and warns Alauddin Khalji that you're not working as per Shariat or Quranic law, then he replies to Alauddin Khalji replies to Qazi Mughisuddin, that it is religion and political system is different, and my relation is with God. Let it be. I will deal with it. You don't have to interfere in my politico-administrative system. You cannot guide me. So he told, I know what is good or bad for the subject. What is good for the subject, I will decree, I will order that. I will not rule. I will not understand whether it is right from the aspect of Quranic law or Shariat or not. So he was a secular king. He was a person who was not, he was a true, imperialist, you can say, or conqueror. In his time, the military state or Greek state was formed. So in the time of Alauddin Khalji, Ziauddin Barni says it was not a theocratic state. So those aspects that comes and these are highlighted in any book that you read, common book including NCERT also. So Ziauddin Barni के बारे में बताइए that he gives information about the grain market, about the mandi, the market reforms of Alauddin Khalji, the economic system also. Ziauddin Barni is highlighting along with the political system. Ziauddin Barni writes and praises Firoz Shah Tughlaq, his patron. So these kind of things. Futuhat-e Firoz Shahi, then other autobiographies were also written. So write about Delhi Sultanate, in sab ke bare mein likhiye. I am just highlighting, I cannot go into details. In the Mughal period, before Mughal, you write about Sur Empire also, like Abbas Khan Sherwani. Abbas Khan Sherwani writes about the struggle between the Humayun and Sher Shah, Sher Shah's struggling age, how Sher Shah rose as an emperor of India, and he writes in detail about it. So Sur Empire, Afghan Empire. Then in Mughal period you have to cover right from Tuske Babri, though it was not written in Persian. Later it was translated into Persian by Abdur Rahim Khana, sorry. So it was written in Chagtai, Turkey, and even that describes about the conditions of India, the condition of India during the advent of Babur and his aims and objectives and other small petty things, the condition, the caste system, the condition of women, climate, the fruits, etc. So that also shows the spirit of the age. Then during the time of Humayun Nama, written by Gulbadan Begum, it was describing the condition of the women, the condition of women in haram. Minute descriptions were given there. The importance of women. Later in the time of Akbar, Abul Fazl you have to write. Abul Fazl के बारे में लिखिए, उसकी किताब के बारे में, अकबरनामा, तारीख Akbari, how Akbari deals with different policies of Akbar. Because he was a celebrated historian of the Mughal period, and he was the part of Abul Fazl was the part of Navratna also. So you write about Akbarnama, you write about Akbari. Then the official historian who wrote during the time of Shah Jahan, like Abdul Hamid Lahori was there. Jahangir ke time mein, Jahangir himself wrote an autobiography. So what all things, only one point कि किससे related है, और that signifies the spirit of that age. So in general you see that religious system, the most dominant theme of the theme of the historiography or the Persian literature was political aspect or theory of kingship or the chronological details or eulogy, like in the case of Firoz Shah Tughlaq. He never criticized, he was not criticizing Firoz Shah Tughlaq, Ziauddin Barni. Then Muntakhab al-Tawarikh, Mullah Abdul Qadir Badauni criticizes Akbar. So you find the criticism of Akbar's policy also. Then Abul Fazl praises him. Then during the time of Shah Jahan, Abdul Hamid Lahori, then in the time of Aurangzeb, you need to write about Bhim Sen and Uska Dilkusha, and then the other literary sources during that time of Aurangzeb, which describes the policy of Aurangzeb. तो इस तरह से आपको मुगल पीरियड में क्या क्या डेवलपमेंट हुआ, describe about it, that how it was throwing light on the economic system, land revenue policy, religious policy of Akbar, then Deccan policy of Akbar at the time of Aurangzeb especially. So these things Kafi Khan writes about. So different historian writing about political aspect, economic aspect, covering trade, land revenue system, social aspect, covering the age, the problems of that age, and then religious policies of different rulers. Were they bigot or conservative, or they were liberals like Akbar, or whether Akbar was a secular ruler or he had that tinge of communalism also. Sometimes in Mullah Abdul Qadir Badauni also writes about, while criticizing Akbar, small things, Deen-e-Ilahi and other things, Mehzar. So we can write many things, giving the quote of the books of the historian of that time, and that is indicating towards Persian literature, and that was the source, and reconstruct the politico-administrative, socio-cultural, socio-economic aspect of that age. वो सारा उन चीज़ों को कवर कर रहा है, किस किस फेज में क्या क्या चीज़ें हुई. तो 3 पार्ट में डिवाइड कर दी. जस्ट इंट्रोड्यूस पर्शियन लिटरेचर, देन यू राइट about Delhi Sultanate, development in Delhi Sultanate, then in Mughal period, and then this answer gets complete. So that shows the spirit of the age, how that is throwing light on different aspect, कैसे इन चीज़ों पे वो रोशनी डाल रहा है. And that is, see, the writer writes whatever he writes what he thinks, and the impact of the environment on his mind. So you have to, and those writings are actually helping us to understand history better. Reconstruction of politico-administrative, socio-cultural, socio-economic history of that time, and the dominant theme was political history in that. Getting the point? So ये हो गया आपका. This question is done. आराम से लिखेंगे, 3 पार्ट में इसको लिखेंगे. Since the decade of 1920s, the national movement acquired various ideological strands and thereby expanded its social base. 2 चीज आ रहा है. पहला आ रहा है 1920s से लेके 1947 तक, from 1920s to 1947. 2 चीज पूछ रहा है. डिफरेंट आइडियोलॉजीज एंड डिफरेंट social groups, or you can say how the expansion of the social base. बहुत आसान है. It is asking from 1920s. If you want to go back to write from moderate and extremist, then revolutionary extremist, and then home rule movement, so the idea of Swadeshi, these were also there in the 1920s. तो इसको पकड़िए पहले. First write this. You write in the first part that Indian national movement started from 1885 with the foundation of Indian National Congress, and then it continued till 1947, till the time India gains freedom. And with the passage of time, it acquired different ideological shape. It was influenced by different ideologies in different time, and that is starting from. तो first आपको ये बताना है कि क्या क्या ideology affected the Indian national base, and how with the passage of time there were expansion in the social base of the Indian national movement. Earlier peasants were not participating there, later we find the peasants were participating in large number. Earlier laborers, the labor class were not participating there, later we find in the Gandhian time, Gandhian era, we find the laborers participating. Prajamandal movement was not happening. The people of princely states were not participating in the early phase. Later they started participating. Then the subaltern groups, they were not participating in the earlier period. The tribals were not participating in the first phase of the tribal revolt, but later on they started participating. So how these women were not participating in the initial phase, but later they started participating, and how the women started participating right from the foundation of Congress, though they were not visible much, but later with the coming of Gandhi, how these women were brought within the ambit of the social base or the Indian national movement, how the youngsters started participating. So we can write a lot of things in this question. So ऐसे इसको लिखेंगे, पार्ट 1 में हम लोग लिखेंगे डिफरेंट आइडियोलॉजिकल पर्सपेक्टिव्स, अलग अलग आइडियोलॉजिकल पर्सपेक्टिव बता दीजिए इसमें. That there were moderates, liberals, who were the main leadership was provided by liberals in Congress. There were extremist radical elements were also there. Then there were revolutionary terrorist movement that started, extremist, idea of Swadeshi and boycott. And this of idea of Swadeshi and boycott, this we see in the Gandhian phase also, Gandhi's phase also. Idea of home rule, 1916, how this home rule movement began by Tilak and Annie Besant. Then constitutional means was adopted by moderates, was adopted by home rule movement. The extremist extra constitutional means were adopted by the extremist. The idea of Swadeshi and boycott, extra constitutional means, all were anti-imperialist, all were anti-British. And then how the beside writing this, the rise of socialist, like Bose was socialist, Nehru was socialist, rise of socialist. So there we find the socialist tinge also on the Indian national movement. Then we have rise of left with the Russian Revolution that happened in 1917, and how there was a spread of the leftist idea or communist idea to India under M.N. Roy, Abani Mukherjee. Communist Party developed. So rise of left, how it affected the trade union movement, formation of trade union movement, labor class movement, and what was the role of labor class in the Indian national movement. So you find the changes. Then Swarajist, rise of Swarajist under C.R. Das and Motilal Nehru. They were following the constitutional means. They were against the Gandhian policy of non-cooperation. After the failure of non-cooperation, there was a formation of a group within the Congress that was Swarajist, who formed Swaraj Party, and they were called as pro-changers because they wanted to become the part of legislative assembly and make changes from within. But the people who were following Gandhian ideology, they were following the non-cooperation ideology of Gandhi. तो स्वराजिस्ट भी एक आइडियोलॉजी है, लेफ्ट आइडियोलॉजी है, सोशलिस्ट आइडियोलॉजी है. होम रूल मूवमेंट, होम रूल which was coming from Irish home rule, Ireland से आ रहा है. Revolutionary extremist that was developed in abroad also, in the first phase from 1913 to 1915. Later on, the second phase was 1920s to 30s, the Bhagat Singh phase, which was totally anti-constitutional, you can say, anti-British, and they were working on the cult of bombs and pistols. They were not ready to listen. They were youngsters, खून खोल रहे होते उनके, and they were not ready to compromise with anyone, and they wanted to throw out the British from India. They wanted quick results. They were not like moderates or extremists. Extremists were going gradually. Moderates were believing in gradual results. The independence is not an overnight process. The independence that they will get will come with the passage of time. Okay, then there were Congress movements were there. There was non-Congress movement like Home Rule movement, or the INA movement was there. RIN mutiny was there, which is the part of revolutionary extremist or revolutionary terrorist movement. That INA movement is revolutionary terrorist movement. Then RIN mutiny, Royal Indian Navy mutiny, was a terrorist movement. Then revolutionary terrorist movement or revolutionary extremism that developed in the first phase from 1903 to 15, and from the second phase 1920s to 30s. 1920s to 30s were influenced by the communist ideology, that is from Russian Revolution, because Bhagat Singh was a communist. And we find that Bhagat Singh had the element of communism. Along with that, he was a great nationalist. So the sentiments, the nationalistic sentiments were inculcated in these great freedom fighters. So Swarajists were there, left were there. There was Praja Mandal movement also. Mandal, the participation of the people from princely states. So it was not a Congress movement, though it was merged with the Congress movement during the time of Quit India movement. Getting the point? Then another ideology was Gandhian ideology. It requires couple of hours only to discuss Gandhian ideology, which was a most important, development. Gandhian ideology. Gandhian ideology was influenced from previous period also. He acquired constitutional means also, extra constitutional means also. He acquired boycott and Swadeshi also of the previous years. Then he extra constitutional things also, like non-cooperation was there, not cooperating with evildoers. This is also an idea. Civil disobedience, extreme form of agitation, breaking of laws, constructive program, various constructive program, charkha chalega, khadi banega, all kind of things, health, hygiene, panchayat raj, rural decentralization, rural development, women, how Gandhi, inculcated a sense of nationalism, how he aroused women and brought them within the ambit of the national movement. कैसे गांधी ने जो है उनको national movement में लाया. So Gandhi had different ideology, which was different from the previous time. How he brought peasant within the ambit of the Indian national movement, working class, how he welded rural areas and urban areas, how he welded the peasant and the labor class, and expanded the base of the movement, social base of the movement. How women played very important role in Gandhian. इससे पहले इतनी सारी औरतें कभी participate नहीं की थी गांधी की वजह से. They were so impressed by the charismatic personality of Gandhi. So Gandhian ideology is very important. Then there is a subaltern approach also. Subaltern approach भी है. Tribals, peasants. Then the national movement is being carried out from the lower rung of the society, not from Congress. Then there are caste movement also going on. So different, ideology. The most dominant was Gandhian ideology. Non-violence, truth. What is this? So different ideology in different, and there are class of people also developing. Peasant is developing, social base increasing, peasant, and then the tribals, women, youth, and then the participation of youth, especially during the time of revolutionary extremism. Bhagat Singh started becoming more popular than Gandhi, in fact, during that time. So the social base was increasing. Socialist was there, leftist was there, trade union movement, how leftist were switching on and switching off from Congress. They were from within the Congress only. कभी कांग्रेस से बाहर चले जाए, कांग्रेस के अंदर आ जाए. Sometimes they had an allegiance with the Russian communism. They were the part. M.N. Roy was a close friend of Lenin, and he was a part of the communist, participated in the 6th Communist International. So this kind of ideology that we see in different ideology in the different period of time, alag ideology, alag. Even Gandhi was seen in the different mood in different times. In 1920s, Gandhi is a different person. 1940, Gandhi is a different, he is becoming more militant in form. We want freedom now, Quit India movement, during the time of Quit India movement, how Gandhi was acting in that time. His speeches in the summer of 1942. So, two part, one different ideology, second part you write different groups. इसमें ग्रुप बता दीजिए, अलग अलग ग्रुप बता दीजिए जो मैंने अभी बताया आपको. ग्रुप्स फॉर सोशल बेस अलग अलग. In civil disobedience, you see the Prabhat Fairies, Manjari Sena, and all these kind of things. The social base of civil disobedience was increasing. Vanar Sena, Manjari Sena, Prabhat Fairies, during the time of non-cooperation, civil disobedience, individual satyagrah. You can write many things. How they played very important role. इसमें सबको बताइए, women, peasant, tribals, subaltern groups, then the socialist, the leftist, स्वराजिस्ट, अलग अलग ग्रुप्स बता दीजिए. गेटिंग द पॉइंट. सो बहुत आसान है ये. इट इज़ अ वेरी वेरी easy question. So I hope you must have understood this question. Let us take a look of this question. Indian philosophy and tradition played a significant role in conceiving and shaping the monuments and their art in India. Discuss. 15 marks. See, the question has 3 parts. One is Indian philosophy. Second is tradition, customs and everything. And then these two's reflection on the monument. It's not a difficult question. Monuments and their art. So this should be part 1, this should be part 2, and this reflection part 3. So it will be like this. See, philosophy, tradition, and reflection. बता दीजिए, सिंपल है. फिलॉसफी, जैनिज्म, बुद्धिज्म, and 6 system of philosophy. 6 philosophy, and all these had the influence of Upanishad. Upanishad, very important. And the crux of the Vedas is Upanishad, the interpretation of Vedas. That is why it is also said that Jainism and Buddhism was influenced by Buddhism, Upanishad. So Upanishad is the gives birth to the philosophical system in India, and then six system of philosophy like Sankhya, Mimamsa, Tvaramimamsa, Yoga, Vaisheshika, all these types of philosophy, Buddhism, Jainism, and their influence on monuments. What can be the monuments? See, caves, stupas, temples, very important, temples. In fact, Puranas also had influence. Puranas, there are 18 types of Puranas. Bhagavad Purana is very important, which shows the dedication towards Lord Krishna, and 108 type of Upanishad. Buddhism and Jainism, you see the influence can be seen here in the cave. Describe about the cave. Sorry, this Buddhism stupas, and then Buddhism caves, rock cut architecture, rock cut architecture. Stupa is the symbol of the Mahaparinirvana of Buddha. The caves also, two parts, chaityas and viharas, where the monks live, is a Buddhist architecture. Even Jain, in fact, Udayagiri and Khandagiri Hill, if you remember, Udayagiri and Khandagiri Hill, the expression of the Jaina architecture. Then the Jaina temples, various temples like Dilwara temple, is also an expression of the Jaina ideology. Buddhist ideology, see in architecture, two architecture as I told you is very important, Buddhist and temple architecture. So Buddhist architecture finds an expression in stupas, especially Medhi. Thus the sixth part in stupas, most important is Medhi, indicating towards God is one, unity of God. Then in caves also, the cave architecture, very important. Then in temples, which developed for the first time in Gupta period, temples, we find the presence of the reference of temples in Gupta period, because there was when the God was, when there was dedication towards Lord Krishna was there, and the love towards God was there, then the people had that much of dedication, they wanted to make a separate place, a temple to keep their God, because वो सोचते थे कि हम तो घर में आके सो जाते हैं, हमारे जो खुदा हैं वो बाहर धूप में हैं, बारिश हो रही है उसमें है, तो उनसे मोहब्बत की वजह से they started developing this temple also. So that comes from the philosophy. Though the scholars say that Purana was the perverted form, the most important thing was Upanishad, which gave birth to different philosophies. So in the Gupta period, temple architecture developed. Everything small, the part of the temple, Kalash is there, then Chhappar is there, then what is Pradakshina Path, what is the importance of Pradakshina Path, then what is Jagmohan, what is Nat Mandir, what is Bhog Mandir, all has connection with Indian philosophy, all has significance. So you have to write the temple and write the origin of this temple and how this later on after the humble beginning of the temple architecture, and later in the early medieval time there was development of Nagar style of architecture, temple architecture in North India and South India, the Dravid style of architecture that developed, in which we find the rock cut temple architecture also during the time of Pallavas, Chalukyas and Rashtrakutas. So you find the dedication towards God, that is, indicating towards bhakti, dedication towards God. That is why the temple was developed. That is why you see idol worship that began in Gupta period, and that's what we see the development of Hinduism in Gupta period. The final compilation of Ramayana and Mahabharata, the influence of Ramayana and Mahabharata on the architecture, the influence of Bhagavad Gita on architecture, the influence of Vedas, the influence of Upanishad. So एक एक को आप पकड़ के Jainism उठाइए, write about the architecture, write about Udayagiri and Khandagiri cave, the influence of Jainism on that philosophy, the influence of Buddhism, what is the influence of the जो सारनाथ पिलर है, जो पिलर्स डेवलप हुए हैं, दो इट इज़ नॉट मॉन्यूमेंट बट इट इज़ एन आर्टिस्टिक फॉर्म, द एडिक्ट्स ऑफ अशोका, then Barabar and Nagarjuni hill caves were donated, that was also the part of architecture to Ajivikas, though Ashoka was the follower of Buddhism, showing the religious tolerance of Ashoka. Then the Buddhist architecture, the caves in Maharashtra, Ajanta caves, the very important expression of Buddhist architecture. Then different caves in Maharashtra, in eastern caves, the Karle, Kanhiri, all these caves that developed in the eastern sides, also eastern part, Udayagiri and Khandagiri. So that also giving an expression. Stupa is very important to be mentioned. Caves, temple, Gupta period temple, Nagar style temple, Dravida and Vesar style. Vesar is the fusion of Nagar and Dravida. Then Sikh system of philosophy also, especially the Sankhya philosophy. Of Kapila. So that discuss about consciousness and unconsciousness, living things and unconsciousness. That is consciousness indicating towards idol worship. Then the Bhakti movement, Saguna and Nirguna also influencing the architectural development. Then in the Sikh system of philosophy only Vaisheshika, that everything, सारी चीज़ें जो है कण कण से बनी हुई हैं, and that is why the monument also has different small parts made up of small parts, so that this is influencing, this is influencing, this is influencing, and with the development of the Indo-Islamic architecture, with the advent of the Muslims in India, the development of architecture in Delhi Sultanate, in Mughal period, like tombs are there, then there are mausoleums are there, then there are masjid, development of masjid, mosque, then there are palaces, minarets, gardens, different, and also they also had influence of Islamic culture, Persian culture, and then the fusion of Persian with the Indian, that is Indo-Islamic, like we see in the monuments of Akbar. So you can write many things. This can be written in more than 1,000 words. The answer will be exhaustive, but you have to confine yourself highlighting these philosophies. Then tradition. What was the dress? Then the customary laws, dress. You see the dress that was seen on the temple cloth, on the dress worn by the idols, like you see the sari or the shining cloth, which is the symbol of the mother goddess, that is being worn by the women that time, that was seen to decorate the god. This is an expression of love towards the god, towards that goddess. So dress is also very important. The temple cloth, which is the which is also indicating towards stress. Then there are belief that the fooding habit is also there. Bhog Mandir was developed. Bhog Mandir, Nat Mandir, dancing, dress, dancing. Devdasis used to dance in Mahakaleshwar temple of Ujjain. Very important development. In the dance was prominent in the Chola temples. So the system, the philosophy, you write the tradition, what tradition is affecting these temples and other monumental structures, and what are the important philosophies that we see is finding and reflection in the architectural thing. This is what you have to write here. So it will contain 3-part answer. Part 1, you write the philosophy and connect it with reflection, or you make it 2 parts. First part, connect it with reflection, that is monument, and then second part, tradition, and then connect it with reflection. So it can be you can write it beautifully. Various things you can write this in this to make your answer different. Okay, so I hope you must have done the exam very good, and I wish you all the best that you get a call for interview. Thank you so much.